Tom and Megan are back to have an exploration of Picard Season 3. In this episode, Episode 1. So, Megan, I'm not quite sure where to start, so I'll start with here. What were some of the things you enjoyed the most about the show, or maybe even themes you saw that we will obviously explore throughout this series?
I think this is gearing up to be a very good episode with, of course, lots and lots of delicious fan service for all of us who have loved this for so many years. Big thing, first off, this seems like it's going to be a big reunion season. We got Beverly Crusher, we got Will Riker, we got the child of Geordi LaForge, possibly with actual LaForge to come. So I think this kind of bringing together of the old gang is going to be really big, and I can't wait for that. I think we're going to see a lot of conflict with Starfleet, which is always really fun. Some new characters. I cannot wait to hear your opinion of Shaw, because he is the best sort of antagonist I think we've seen so far in the Picard franchise. Great new villains, bounty hunters, very exciting. I'm pretty much into everything that we've seen so far this season, with the exception of I'm not sure how I feel about how Seven and Rappy's relationship is going to be treated or has been treated, but I think more will be revealed in time.
Interestingly, on the last episode of Season 2, someone put a comment on my YouTube post, or our YouTube post, that said, they're not together anymore.
Cowards is all I have to say about the writing team. Cowards!
So all of your great words at the end of Season 2. But I'm sure there's going to be a reason. But here's the thing, and here's why I appreciate that. It's not cowardly. It's just, hey, there's no difference. Period. Queer or not queer, you still have inner dynamics or interrelationship issues. It doesn't matter. And that's what, when I see something like that, I'm like, oh, they broke up. So what? That's why I like it. It's just, I know that may be different than your perspective, but I'm just like, yeah, guess what?
I think if they've given us a little more of their relationship. And if they say, hey, at the end of season 2, it seemed like they were going to give it a real shot to really make a go of it. If they'd shown that a little bit, and if they'd shown it not working, I'd have no problem with it. They didn't bother.
Okay. I'm sure we're going to get to explore that. But let me just start with the title of this episode, The Next Generation. I think that gave it all. Yes. Now, as anyone who's listened to our podcast, you're a Voyager aficionado, but you still love TNG, and obviously I'm a TOS guy, but I still love TNG. Having Beverly is just great. Love the way they tease their relationship at the end of TNG. Basically, Picard had his head screwed a little differently. Wesley would have been his son. And I think he realized there was a huge missed opportunity. And I almost thought Beverly basically said that to him. But then Jack Crusher came along, and she had a very happy marriage to Jack, who died way too early, both for her and Wesley. We have that whole dynamic. What about Picard and Loris at this point? Loris obviously understands him, and I don't want to say sacrificed her love for him to let him leave, but I think she understands he had to do this. He couldn't move on. And having Beverly's communication come in through the old communicator, I just love that. That was so cool. Then we go to, and the really cryptic message, trust no one.
I love how
at this point
Picard's response to trust no one was, Will Riker! I thought that was great.
So he connects with Riker, and they devise this plan to get on the Titan. It didn't happen in this episode, but we will talk about it in episode 2. Shaw completely explains why he has the relationship with Riker and Picard that he does. And once again, it was absolutely brilliant, that we'll explore a little bit, but he is clearly antagonistic towards the two. And at the time in episode 1, we didn't know but I thought it was fair for him to feel that way, that Picard is clearly showing his age. I don't know if he's 80 or in his late 70s, but he comes aboard the Titan and basically wants to hijack it for his own mission. And Shaw's having none of it. And he says, you guys, you had your time, you did your thing, now it's my turn, and my crew is going to do what Starfleet wants us to do. Whether it's a 5-year mission to explore new planets or not, this is what we're going to do, and I'm not going to allow you to do. And then 7 of 9. We obviously have to talk about her, but I see her through a different lens than you a little bit. And I was concerned about where we ended in season 2. We got to explore her humanity because she got to be a human again. And I was a little concerned about her at first because she seemed to be a little unclear on that. But it was clear to me she was back to being part Borg. And the captain didn't see her that way. And I felt that she was being, I don't want to say discriminated against because she's the first officer, but there's a clear distrust, I felt, between Shaw and her, simply because she had those Borg mechanics in her. And
oh, absolutely. And
I think
names
that
are
was
a big
fair.
deal. Names are a really big deal. And so having to go with Annika Hansen, even when she
Right.
would have maybe perhaps preferred to be 7 of 9, I think that's a big issue. It's a big sacrifice to have to make to try and take the Starfleet path, which, I mean, it seems like she was going for it, doing a good job. First officer is nothing to sneeze at. But I think, yeah, it was really interesting. She's clearly struggling with the role and not having the independence that she had worked so hard to gain and develop in her previous career and her work with the Friendless Rangers. So it was interesting to see her try and swallow that to succeed in this path that people she had admired and learned from had taken and recommended for her. I was delighted with the choices that she made in this season. Captain Shaw as a character, I think, fantastic. Amazing acting, amazing delivery, and that kind of really irritating person. He's a complete jerk, but he's not wrong. It's frustrating, but also okay. And I just thought, fantastic choices. I loved it.
What did you think of
Adorable.
Sidney LaForge?
How cute was Sidney LaForge?
What about her relationship or not relationship with her father?
I don't know. I think it seems affectionate. It seems warm from what she was saying. But I think we have to learn more. She probably doesn't like being in someone's shadow quite so much. But it's always embarrassing, like when your friend's parents come to visit you at work, is a weird feeling.
I was interested in her choice to become a navigator because I didn't want to have anything to do with what my father did. And that's part of the reason I became a lawyer, because he was. And so she's a navigator, not an engineer. And I thought that was a really interesting career choice. And it demonstrated to me there was some tension there. And I've had that tension myself, so I really tuned into that.
Yeah, I don't know if I got that.
But
I can't imagine Geordie LaForge, the character as we know him, being really firm, you must follow in my footsteps, child. I definitely see him more as you follow your passions, my wonderful, darling offspring, and I will support you in whatever you do.
I saw my father talk to my sister that way. If you go to college up north or out west, we'll never see you again. It'll be your fault. And that influenced her to stay close to home to go to college. I guess I sensed a little bit of that, and my sense is that dads do that with daughters more than they do with sons. I don't know. You're more in the daughter category.
I've got a particularly awesome father. He was never anything but supportive of the different things I wanted to do. Yeah, so I guess that's my default assumption for how dads act.
Fair enough. So what did you think of the Titan? I thought it was cool,
Really
cool
cool.
bomb
It was really
beyond
cool.
belief.
What a great name for a ship. I love Titan as a name. And the new upgrades and the changes to it I thought was a really interesting way to show Picard's place in everything, even as an admiral, because he wasn't up to date on how these newer ships worked. I thought that was really interesting.
And once again, in episode 2, Riker goes in a direction I had not seen before. But did you feel like Riker was treated by Picard or felt like himself that he was Picard's equal, or did we devolve pretty quickly into the captain and number
I think they were
one?
captain and number one, and I think they're obviously friends and have great mutual respect. But Picard's an admiral, rather. They're not equal. Picard's got an extra pip, so I think like the conversations between them, the interplay, I think, is very much like between equals. But if we are talking rank, no, they're still a number one.
And what did you think of Jack Crusher Jr. in episode 1?
Did we see much of him in episode 1? Or was he more episode 2? Just a little bit? I didn't have strong
Just a
thoughts
little
about him.
bit. A little bit. We at the start and
Did
then
not
at
have
the
strong
end.
thoughts. Yeah, much stronger thoughts next episode.
I immediately began to get the sense that he's Tom Ripper and basically
the
a chameleon.
sales and the bribery.
Part
and
of it was
he's a good con man.
exactly. That's what I thought he was, and particularly at the end, towards the end of this episode, when Vadic says why they want to take him, and he's an intergalactic criminal. I didn't really hear a violent criminal. What I heard was a criminal who engages in fraud. And they always seemingly are for very good ends, but at the end of the day, it's for them. And I really had that feeling that he's just a con man, that I didn't get the sense that he's a Han Solo rebel con man or trying to move the New Republic forward. I had an immediate distaste for him. Maybe that will change. Maybe that won't. What about?
I was going to say, what
this
do you
show
think
was
about
one big Easter egg.
Right?
Loved her. Loved
a
her.
bad guy who's
absolutely
with their own
loved
evilness.
her. I hope she's a comedian in her real life, because that's how she played it. It was just, you're absolutely right. We so rarely get those bad guys who revel in it, as perhaps opposed to Sneed, the other bad guy we saw in this that we'll have to get to. But I love
you
her.
get so many complex villains these days who have backstories and have conflicting emotions. And man, I hope they just keep going with the unrepentant, absolutely gleeful evilness. It's so refreshing.
Rafi appears in this. So what did you think about Rafi's role and initial
Initially,
scenes
my
in
first
episode
thought,
one?
when I realized who she was and what she was doing, my first thought was, oh no, how terrible things have happened to bring her to this place. And then when she pulled out the Starfleet intelligence, okay, this is cool, we can work with this. So I thought it was really interesting. I'm very curious about how this came to be. So there's plainly a lot that happened between the seasons. It's not an immediate pickup. And so I'm wondering, how did she get into Starfleet intelligence? The mysterious handler, which more will be revealed shortly. I think she's still struggling with the things she's always been struggling with. Her family, her duty, her persistence with a problem like a dog with a bone. So I think it's going to be a good season for Raffi.
I was going to say, this episode is basically one big Easter egg. But were there any Easter eggs that really got your attention, or do you really love?
Picard and Riker met up in Guidance, which was fun, of course. Those were the big ones. Not as steeped in the lore, I think, as you are. So I'm interested to hear what you picked up on.
The first one was a little bit morbid, but Beverly Crusher, had a box that she identified as either belonging to or somehow connected to Jack Crusher, her deceased husband. I was convinced his ashes were in there, so that she was still carrying his ashes years and years and years and years later. I thought that was pretty cool. Picard made a reference to Romulan Ale. How can you not love that? He had a painting of the Enterprise D and a model that he had shipped to this Starfleet museum, which we'll learn a little bit more about later. And so I thought those were cool. The Frontier Days. Now, I'm from Texas. Frontier Days means something big in Texas and most of the West, and probably, I know, in Calgary and other places in the west of Canada. I don't know about you Easterners.
You mean colonization day?
That too. But that's a big deal in the Southwest. And so that had a resonance for me. But what I had either not realized or had forgotten, that Starfleet predates the Federation. And so Frontier Days does not celebrate the Federation, or as you would say, Colonization Day. It celebrates the cowboys who went out on Starfleet, boldly go where no person had gone before. So I thought that was a pretty cool reference. Yeah. And obviously the title of the episode, all of the characters we met, the LaForge popping up, they were all just great. It's, as you said to start this episode, it's clear homecoming's coming. Let's just strap in and enjoy the ride. Anything, and one other really interesting cookie, a deep cookie, was Vodic's chair was from a Klingon cruiser from the movie The Undiscovered Country, her captain's chair. So I thought that was cool to tie all of that in together. But it's clear we're going to have a ton of fun, Megan. I look forward to episode 2. This is Tom Fox again. Thanks so much for listening to this episode where we looked at Picard, episode 1, The Next Generation. I hope you will join us for our next episode where we look at episode 2 from Picard season 3, Disengage. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to great podcasts, because That's What Heroes Do is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.